Morning, everybody. So we're going to cover a pre-job brief and a couple of the updates that we've had for this newest iteration of our pre-job brief. So without further ado, we'll get started. So we all know the purpose of this training. We want everybody to know the expectations and the correct use of the pre-job brief itself, understand the proper completion of the document, what our expectations are, ensuring that everybody meets those standards that we're setting. To maintain consistency when using the pre-job brief so everybody knows what it looks like and how it should be filled out appropriately, and then hold all employees responsible for the completion and correctness of the pre-job brief so that you guys have been trained on what our expectations are and you guys can go forward and go ahead and use that to set your own standard when making a pre-job brief. Okay, so as for the main components, nothing's changed. Obviously, date and time at all times. We did add a circuit, so we want to know what circuit you're working on. So you add that in there as well. That's something that should be filled out every single time, including the crew leader phone number, the yard you're working out of, the closest emergency facility, the name of that facility, and then the address below it. That should be filled out at all times. No exceptions with that. Any of the things we had discussed before. Your GF name, GF phone number should be filled out. The type of work you're completing should be filled out. Are you doing taps, cuts? Are you doing hardenings, storm work, whatever it may be? Then on the left, obviously, you see your voltage and your minimum approach distances. Circle whether you're working delta or Y. And then from there, like for example, circle if you're 4.8 kV, circle your phase to ground exposure of 2.1 and your phase to phase of 2.2. Something that we knew that we did add on is the arc flash and open air. So what you're going to see is obviously all the numbers on the side, the left side of that. When we are working one phase at a time, it's only a one source. So if you're working at 4.8 kV one source, it's going to be 4'9". Two sources means that you're working two phases at once, which we all know is prohibited on DTE property, Local 17 property, and working with and for LECOM. So make sure that when you are doing the 4.8 kV hardening, that your arc flash boundary stays consistently of 4'9". Then from there, check anything that your work description is, what you're doing for that day, and then fill out your job task description as well. And then the picture of the arc flash boundary just shows you pretty much that arc is not just a one-way thing. Arc is all the way around that conductor. So that conductor is the very dark gray space in the middle. And then your arc potential after that is what is around that. So make sure when you're looking at a conductor, it's all directions, not just one direction of going up or away from your body. Now moving on to the back side of that pre-job brief. Equipment to be used, fill out all the equipment that you're going to use for that day, backyard machine, bucket, put numbers there, things of that sort. Any other equipment that you want to put in there is cool as well. And then pull type. So for each location, we want to know, are you working a straight line pull? Are you working a buck pull? Whatever it may be, just put your location pull type down there, and we'll get to why we're doing that in a little bit. Then your special precautions and energy source control. Anything that you are doing, anything that you're using, that can be checked off right there. Check it off. If you are doing something else that you don't see under the checks, then make sure you write that underneath an other. Then we move on to job site hazards. So obviously check off any hazards that you're dealing with. And now we are rolling out something called Sticky, which I will get to in the next slide, but we're going to explain what Sticky is and how you should use it for your pre-job walk in the next slide. So bear with me on that one. And then protective measures and mitigations. Ensure that you are checking off everything PPE wise. Any other mitigations and protective measures, additional measures should be commented on the bottom as well. And then at the very bottom, so this is why we're asking you what kind of pull type you are working on, because we want to know how many pieces of rubber that you're using for each location during the day. This is just more of a CYA for you guys, and especially dealing with these third-party people that are coming out for DTE that aren't necessarily familiar with line work. We can always back you up when we can initially understand that you guys are using X amount of rubber on this type of pole, on this type of pole setup, or whatever it is. So this is a CYA for you guys. I fully expect you guys to fill that portion out, especially. Everything on the pre-job brief is not up for interpretation. That's something that should be filled out in depth. So if you're using rubber, make sure you're putting down how many pieces of rubber you're using per location. So this is going to require you to do another pre-job brief when you move on to another location, just to at least fill out the location and the pole type, and then obviously how many pieces of rubber you're using. And then obviously if the scope of work changes for whatever reason, you needed to conduct another pre-job brief, there's no exceptions with that one as well. And then ensure when you're doing your signatures, you do not fill out your PM initial until it is actually PM. If you don't take a lunch break, that's understandable. Don't fill out the PM initial unless, like I said, the scope of the job changes, then you can initial for that pre-job brief right there for the day. So that's it for this portion of that the pre-job brief training of what the actual pre-job brief should look like. Safety will be coming around to each yard and making sure that you guys fully understand everything that's on it. Now I'm going to move on to the actual sticky and what we are asking you to do for that portion of the pre-job brief. Okay, so sticky is an acronym that we're using now for everything safety in the field. So it stands for either stuff that can kill you, shit that can kill you. I don't care how you say it. You can say it however you want, but make sure that you're going through these things doing your pre-walk. When you pre-walk the job site, check for these hazards that may be associated to these different parts of the sticky wheel. So if you have a gravity thing, what's something that can happen that's gravity related? We look at if you guys are working aloft and you're dropping things out of the bucket, making sure the hole's clear, things of that sort. Mechanical failures, the bucket can fail, drop down to the ground, so make sure you talk about that, mitigations, things like that. Make sure nobody's underneath you. Always be clipped in, things of that sort. Electrical, you guys deal with it daily. I don't expect anything to change with that, so talk about that as well. Anything pressure related, temperature related, heat stress, heat stroke, things like that, or in the winter, cold stress, things like that as well. Chemicals, which PCB cans, things like that. Maybe coating on the wire if you are dealing with some asbestos or certain things of that sort. There's biological as well. COVID is something that we can put on that. Radiation, 5G towers or 5G antennas on top of poles, making sure you're following that process to shut it down before you work. Sound, are we working and it's extremely loud what we're doing? Something like jackhammering, do we need earplugs for that? Do we need earmuffs for that, or what do you want to do? Motion, you can think about things like traffic. So if you're working on a busy intersection, motion is something that you should be discussing because traffic is an extremely big hazard for that type of job. So talk about these things. We want to talk about more of these things out there that can kill you. So you guys are thinking about it as opposed to, oh, there's a little divot in the ground. Slip, trips, and falls is something that we read on every single pre-job brief. That's great. Talk about that if you'd like. Talk about the dogs in the area because that is something obviously that can kill you as well. The public is something as well you can bring up for your sticky presentation or your sticky meeting. But this should take precedence this should take the number one focus of hazard recognition. We've dealt with things like SLAM in the past and things of that sort. So what we're using now is sticky. Talk about stuff that can kill you. We need to talk about this daily and figure out mitigations for some of these things that can kill us, obviously. So if you guys have any questions with sticky at all, you can feel free to call myself, call Caitlin, call Angelica. We can also walk through this with anybody that needs it to be more of an in-depth, maybe field visit type of walkthrough. So feel free, we're always available. Go ahead and give us a call for that, and I'll move on to the next slide. All right, management review of pre-job briefs. So if you have crews out in the field, obviously, and they come in for the day, you can wait till next morning to go through their pre-job briefs or tailboards or however you want to do it. But we have to start reviewing these pre-job briefs at least daily to make sure that everything's filled out to our standard, to make sure that we're not missing anything, to make sure that we can train appropriately to what we need to do. So management needs to coach foremen on any subpar pre-job briefs and ensure that all foremen are following proper pre-job brief procedure. So what we want to do is we want to make sure that all foremen are meeting the same standard that we are setting forth. And safety will do this when we're on site as well. So we'll definitely have coaching from a lot of different angles. And then safety and health will review tailboards monthly to ensure additional training is not needed for crews. So if we see a lot of weak pre-job briefs, you might have another training coming up in the near future. So everybody keep each other accountable, make sure that you're filling it out the way you're supposed to. You guys know our standard now moving forward. So if there are any questions, like I said in the previous slides, feel free, give us a call, give your general foreman a call for any questions, anything like that. All right, everybody, thank you for listening. Like I said millions of times before, any questions at all, reach out to the safety team, reach out to your general foreman, supervisor, whoever it may be, to answer any questions. I know sticky is going to be something that's new for a lot of people. You guys might have a lot of questions about how how to properly do it, that's totally fine. You guys seek me out. Like I said, safety will be going around each yard to ensure that you guys are understanding everything that you're going through in this training, and as well as having a quiz. So next step in this process, as you guys know a million times, is to complete the quiz link and move on from that point. So thanks.